Hi, I'm IKEA, and for today's video I want to do a build showcase on Purple Build, as that seems quite fitting for this Festivals of Fools Day. And I'm going to go a little bit into the builds that I have, which is a Redbuild and a turretdrone build, and mostly actually discuss how to put them together, as that is the more interesting part of it for me, as they're actually quite challenging to farm. That is actually why I have the builds. And of course, there are challenge builds in their own right to try to get through all of the content with them, which through the years I have done a lot of things with my purple builds. As also in the past, I used to run with others that were as crazy as me, and we would run purple gangs where all 4 players would be running purple builds, and we would try to get through heroics and such. And it is actually a lot easier than you would imagine that to be, as they aren't as bad as they may seem on the surface. As always, I will be making extensive use of my build collection, and specifically if we actually scroll all the way down there, you see those 2 that aren't green or yellow, mostly, as most of the other build pictures are. Those 2 will be the ones discussed here, and as always, I was linked to both the build collection and the pictures that I'll use for today. As always, this build showcase will be split up into 2 chapters. In the first one, I will explain the build. We will also actually even go into some of the numbers for the red build, as that might be a little bit interesting to know. And then we will take these builds into some gameplay. I haven't actually currently decided yet what I'm going to show off with them, but yes, we will do some stuff with them, and I will discuss them while I play them and live narrate. So to jump into the build itself, I've prepared here the red build, as it lives actually in my stash. That is why in the build collection they are prefaced with S instead of a number. That means that they live in my stash, basically. So I don't have this build really saved on any character specifically. I can just grab them from my stash. And as you can see here, this is a purple build, and if you haven't seen these before, this might look a little bit weird, and you might ask yourself, why would anyone actually make a purple build? Well, the obvious first answer is you're giving up a lot of stats. That makes it a lot weaker build, and that makes it a challenge build. So the maxed out stats for instance, actually, I have a piece here that I specifically grabbed. So the weapon damage maxed out is 13. The crit damage maxed out is 11.5. The crit chance actually is 5.5. I know that one as well. So you're giving up stats there. And also, none of these pieces have mod slots. So the mask, the backpack, and the chest do not have mod slots. So you're giving up 3 mod slots there as well. So you're landing a lot lower. And of course, also the weapons do not have a third stat at all. So there, you're also giving up some stats. And even, for instance, the base damages of the weapons are actually lower for a purple weapon than a high-end weapon. And all that together means that it is actually a lot weaker build. And that, of course, you can use that to give yourself a little bit more of a challenge, as the harder it is to kill stuff, the more stuff also tends to cascade, and it gets harder and harder. And that is also the mentality of why we do quite often, especially in groups, run red builds together, as the faster you kill, the faster stuff dies, of course. And that means also that stuff isn't shooting back. You don't have to deal with it cascading up into a point where you can't deal with it anymore. But more importantly than playing the build is, for me especially, is trying to farm the build. As you may see, on all my pieces, I have 1 recalibration and nothing is optimized. And that is not by me not knowing how to optimize or anything, but you cannot optimize purple gear. You can only optimize high-end gear sets. Those two actually. That's the two that you can optimize. So to find pieces, you only get one recalibration. That instantly changes actually, first off, what the parts you want to go after, as for instance, for chest and backpack, especially if you are just farming normally for a high-end build, what you usually want to go for is to have the 3 stats full, so you can have an open talent. That is quite unlikely to happen to you to get that on a purple build. So instead, what it becomes is that you want to find the right talents. That also goes for the weapons. So as you can see on the weapons especially, I want to find them with the right talent, and one of the 1 bars full enough, as especially for instance in this case, I was lucky enough to find one with a maxed out damage to targets out of cover on this LMG, and then put the other stat alongside it, as you do get the full stats. So while the as you can see, for instance, here I have recalibrated the crit chance, the weapon damage on a maxed out or top stat on a purple would be 13, but if I recalibrate onto it, I can put it 15. I can put whatever I have in my recalibration library. That works always like that as well. So even when you are under leveled, for instance, if you're doing Warlords Watch Alt or something and you're making a set for them, you can actually already put 15 weapon damage on all of the pieces, for instance. As it is basically the stat that comes out of your library. And yeah, that makes it quite challenging to find pieces for this, as of course we do not have access also to named items as well. So we don't get to have a Fox's Prayer, we don't get to have contractors, as you would actually, it is surprising how much difference it makes as when 1 slot is accounted for already, which with a normal high-end red build would be the case, where you basically are going to put a Fox's Prayer in there and maybe even a contractor. So those 2 slots are basically accounted for, and that leaves you just 4 slots to farm for. In this case, we do not have that. What we do, of course, go for then is to have 3 pieces of Providence, a Grupo, a Seska, and a Fenris piece, as those are the pieces that will give us the best brand bonuses available. And yeah, so even in all my farming, as you can see, I do not have great pieces. I do have a few. For instance, this holster, this glove, this backpack also is not bad. This mask and this knee pad could use some work, and especially my chest. I would love to find something better. Now, also this leads me into how do you farm for these, and that is on hard difficulty. On challenging and above, everything that drops becomes high-end, and on hard and normal and story, you have chances of parts being either superior or high-end. And also actually superior is the rarity name for purple gear, and that is also one of the jokes, as always has been, why be high end when you can be superior? Yeah, I mean, come on, who doesn't want to be superior, right? So that has always been also, yeah, a joke that you can apply here. For weapons and such as well, most of the weapon types do drop, and even currently the Prophet drops as a purple, which is completely unintended, of course, and that makes it easy piece to pick for here, even though you're giving up, it has no stats, where it should have actually 1 stat still. It should have weapon damage stat, but I would, yeah, why not have a named in there? But finding weapons also becomes about finding the right talent, having one of the bars full enough so you can put the other one. So for instance, in this case, I have the perfect one, except that it isn't great for using as a primary, as it isn't the fast hands LMG, but as a secondary for just unloading once a room. A strained is actually fine. But this is, for instance, I have farmed quite a lot. I should actually say I run Summit on hard quite a lot, more than most. As firstly, I do that for 30 floors challenge, of course, but also I specifically do that to farm for this build. And I quite enjoy doing that, as I'll put it on pretty high directives, 6 or 7 directives, and put something in the background. And it's not hard at all, of course. Hard is quite easy difficulty, so it isn't a challenge for that part, but trying to find purple parts, purple pieces, yeah, it can take a while before you have anything decent. And they drop pretty few and far between with decently full stats. As even on hard, most of the parts that drop, of course, gear, the minimum roll scales with difficulty. So the higher you go in difficulties, the higher the minimum roll on pieces. That means that, in effect, you have better pieces on higher difficulty, you will get better stats. But we cannot go above challenging, of course, because once we go beyond challenging, nothing superior drops. So you have to do it on hard and below, and that also affects difficulty alongside directives, which is something that is quite unclear to a lot of people. The difficulty also affects the drop rate for targeted loot alongside directives. So it's not just directives that matter there, but also the difficulty. So we're dropping in difficulty, that is causing us to get less targeted loot. Some of the loot will also still be high-end, so we're not getting just purple pieces. And yeah, it might, for instance, I have been trying to, for this video specifically, trying to find a TKB to replace this AKM as, in general, the TKB is just a better AKM at this point. There is no reason actually to run AKMs anymore when you can run a TKB. As if I found a TKB with the same stats, I would just be better off. It has basically the same recoil pattern and such as well. So yeah, but I couldn't. So, and I've been farming for quite a few days, and I've reached my own personal deadline for making this video. So I go in with what I have available to me here. And yeah, that would be surprising, especially if you know that, if I know how much I have farmed Providence targeted loot as well, and this is the best chest that I have. So you can imagine that, yeah, it can take quite a while to put a good set together. And that is, I find that quite fun. It completely changes as well your how much you care about when loot drops, because with most of my gear and most of my loadouts, I have the ability to optimize. And even so I'm even in a somewhat weirder situation than most, where I do not have the ability to do watch alts even with my level. Well, I choose to not have that ability. I have 4 characters that are all filled up. You only have 4 character slots, if you did not know. So that means that for me to actually do watch alt, I would have to delete one of my characters, and I'm unwilling to do that, as most of them have, yeah, quite a lot of hours played. And yeah, I have personal attachments to all of my characters, as I've played them for quite a while, of course. So I would not delete them to make space for a watch alt. And then also I would have to, even if I wanted to, for instance, put all the loadouts back, that would just be like hours of work on its own if I were to even like delete the character, run a watch alt, spend the points. But of course I do play a lot, so I do get a lot of watch points just in general, as even, for instance, on this character, I have probably 2k saved up. Yeah, I have 2k available to me, and that's across all my characters, so I have 10k available, which is more than most people would have even with watch alts. But all of my high-end gear is, of course, just everything's optimized or recalibrated, or I farmed quite well and gotten good pieces, but everything's perfect. Everything's just, I will go out, I will farm the best part that I can. I'll do that for a little bit, and once I basically go, okay, this is the best part I'm going to have, for instance, for this one, I will just optimize the rest, and that'll be it. I do not have that ability here. So this is an endless farm for me. And yeah, that makes it quite fun. If we jump over to the build picture after me ranting for way too long on that, If I bring that up here, yes, you can see that I'm going basically for in this case for this is the Redbuild variant, of course. I'm going for especially weapon damage maxed out and crit chance crit damage as high as I can get it. That is the intent of here. And as you can see here, I have 60 crit chance. So it is actually quite easy to reach 60 crit chance, as we're also not giving up that crit chance on the for Fox's Prayer, of course. So we have 6 pieces to work with to reach that 60. And as you can see, I have tried to actually keep it so that I have crit damage on every piece, which is what I would want to have, of course. We have Seska and Providence, so we have more than a normal red build would with 20 from brand bonuses. Of course, I'm on a full watch character, so that's 30 already together, so you only need 30 from the rest. You will get 15 from the weapon, of course, so you only need 15 from gear. And I'm actually above 15 on gear here, not by too much, I believe, as I can actually take us in-game and actually double check. So as well, if you are wondering, if you want to know how much over you are, you remove one mod or several mods from your weapon, and then you can see what the difference was. So I'm on 57.3 with one less mod on my weapon. So I am wasting 2.7 of this mod, which I'm fine with, as reaching 60 is a goal, and putting crit damage there or something would actually not help me. And while I could put, for instance, the stability muzzle on here, I usually don't. I don't really need them. I actually I prefer having all my weapons mostly towards the same, not having that stability bonus, as once you get used to it, other weapons feel poor. And in Division 2, I don't even actually really feel you need much weapon handling. You will, of course, get a little bit from your watch, and I actually even on the gear as well there, I have some weapon handling, not by choice. It's the best pieces that I have. And that's enough for me. As with all red builds as well, the specialization is up for you to choose. The skills are up for you to choose. It is a red build, so it is just weaker. It's 60 crit chance. It's 130 crit damage, which is, if I double check actually in game, that is actually what it is here as well in the character. As of course, as you can see, as a giveaway, so what my SHD is here, and what here it's 14K9, and there on the build picture there when it was made, it was 11K6. So yeah, this has been a while ago, and I have actually upgraded the AR, but most of the other parts are actually exactly the same. Yeah, so this build has not had an upgrade in quite a while, as this is actually, before this was the time that I spent a lot of time farming for the 4 purple builds especially. But even then, since then, I've tried to get some upgrades, but I have not been successful. So you can imagine, how much time you could invest into these kinds of builds, as you don't have optimization to make it easy on you. If we actually, before I jump into the numbers, so the other variant that I have of this build, or of superior builds, of purple builds, is to do a turret drone variant. And actually, the turret drone variant is quite effective still, as you do not give up as much as with the red build, as we still have the same amount of brand bonuses, of course. Skill damage and such does not have something like Fox's Prayer, or something where it has a waveform, of course, but waveform actually isn't a real increase, especially for turret drones. But we still have, especially as I've gone mostly for skill damage, having the skill damage is all capped out. So that, together with the brands and stuff, means that this build actually is pretty close to normal high-end turret drone build, as mostly what we're giving up is some damage on not having a capacitor, as of course capacitor is an exotic, so it does not fit in on a superior build. And in that case, I'm using this FAMAS with InSync. And as you can see here as well, I've gone for what I prefer to have on most of my turret drone style builds, even in a true turret drone. So this is where a turret drone hybrid is a red build that has some yellows put into it. This is, of course, just a normal turret drone build. But even there, I prefer to have a lot of crit chance, crit damages in there instead of skill haste, which is the other option. As skill haste, the turret and the drone are cooldowning in 17 seconds and in 18 seconds, and I'm fine with that. I don't need more skill haste. Even with max skill haste, that would take this down to around 13, 14 seconds on that build. So that means that we have delta on the game, but I will log in there again. That means that I will go for crit chance, crit damage just to amp up my weapon damage, and that makes a lot more sense, especially with the capacitor, which recoups weapon damages as well. And also, as you can see here, I'm doing it wrong basically by having 6 skill tiers and technician, but technician is still nice to have even with 6 skill tiers, as I'm very unlikely to find a piece that would work for me to be able to recore it. Like that's going to be a really rare piece that is close to full up on skill damage and has the ability for us to recore it. But this variant actually is a lot more effective, but it is a turret drone build, so it's in general effectiveness it is actually lower than red build. But it is an option, and this one as well takes quite some time to get together and farm it up. And now if we jump over to some numbers, and if I actually have the ability to make that one quite large, I have taken the combat medic calculation sheet that I made for that one for a little bit ago, and I've added in this build, which is I call it in my build collection, it's called the Purple Haze, and the other one's called Purple Haze 2, as of course they are. And I've input the stats and such for it. I've of course calculated out its weapon damage, and also I want to make a note here to say that even the purple, so here the base that we have calculated out here is for the superior black market AKM, and the high-end black market AKM, which I've just taken from my burst and sustain tables, is a lot more. It's 60k, 60.6k, where this superior variant has a 56.3 base, and that base is of course fixed. But just purple gear has purple weapons specifically have lower base damage even as well. So you're bleeding damage everywhere, basically. And if we go actually and go through the stats as well, so we do have actually pretty close to the cap of 140, or well, the cap, the normal build layout with Fenris, with all red weapon cores and such, would be 140 usually. So we're pretty close to that with 136, with 2 pieces where I had maxed out weapon damage on a purple one, which was 13, and I've kept that and then substituted out a different stat. So I've either put in crit damage or crit chance or something like that. And that's quite good, actually, but especially, our crit damage is quite low at 136, and that's mostly down. So, for instance, if we had 3 mod slots to give us another 36, we would actually go over that 150 that for red builds, actually, for beginners and such, gets brought out as like the raid recommendation. And well, this is low. The crit damage is low. The crit chance is fine. Our talents are, of course, the purple talents and normal talent, high-end talents are always the same. The talents just work the same. So here we have obliterate and vigilance on the pieces, and yeah, that those stay. So that's why it's important to actually have the right talents, especially. Our DTH, the weapon isn't full DTH, doesn't have the full bar, so it's only 11. We have no damage to targets out of cover. The weapon does not have a third stat. We don't have access to Fox, so no damage to targets out of cover at all. In this case as well, actually, which wasn't the case when I did the combat medic check or the numbers or the showcase, I've added in here another 10 for most of the other builds for just their weapon talent. So if they were strained, which actually in this case, none of these builds I run as strained. I mostly run them as fast hands, but just to have them be in there for comparison to the combat medic, which will not get a chance to have a weapon talent at all. So here I'm basically, this 10 is simulating having strained in there, as that is usually around 9-something%. And it isn't precise, but it's close enough for just an easy comparison here, as a few percents off I do not care about as much. It is just to show where it lands. And yeah, as we have the glass red at the top again, as always, and all these percentages are comparing to that, we can see that the obliterate red and such drop down low. And if we look at the purple, actually, we can see that it is in between the two combat medics. That is actually the damage output that it has. It is a lot less than, for instance, even an unbreakable vigilance red. And yeah, it is basically half of the damage, burst damage output of a glass vigilance red. And yeah, about 60% of a normal obliterate vigilance red if this was a high-end build on the burst end, and it's doing a little bit better on the sustain end, as the AKM is a better sustainer than the others. But yeah, this is actually quite telling about how effective this build is. So if, for instance, actually you, which for I know from experience is if you take 8 people with red builds into a raid, it feels about as if you have 4 people with good builds. Well, actually, about 5 people with good builds do it about in the same time, especially dark hours, where we have done it with 5 people. That is about as much of a struggle as taking 8 of these through dark hours. And I have ran both raids with these. In IH, we actually didn't do it with a full group of people in purple gear, as by that point, less people were interested in taking the time to make these. But even there, I have done it with a group of 4 people with purple gear, and then the rest carrying us a little bit. But especially dark hours but then this was still in the time pre-Warlords, where we did take 8 people with purple builds through dark hours, and that was actually quite a lot of fun. And we have done that through the ages quite a lot of times. Dozens of times probably that I have ran dark hours with the purple build. Sometimes I was the only one, sometimes I was with a few others, but just for shits and giggles, basically. As that is what this build in actual play is for shits and giggles. It is a joke build. It is just to get your purple gang insignia, and that is kind of what it's good for. But yeah, as I explained as well, it is actually a lot of it is a challenge, especially to farm it all together. But yeah, here on the damage ends and stuff, calculation wise, you can see that it is quite weak. It is basically the combat medic, and where the combat medic also heals as well quite effectively. This one doesn't heal or anything, of course, but it is superior. It is the superior build here. So having talked at length about this build and giving you some stories and such, I think it is time to take this into some gameplay, and I will take first there's Redbuild into some gameplay, and then the turretdrone as well, and we will discuss it further in some live gameplay. Here I've accepted an invite for American History Museum. And one concession that I do make with this build, and we're all the way at the start, so which is great, it's an invaded variant with just fog of war, is that if the group is already too weak, I will not put extra burdens on them by having to carry me on a purple build. So if I join a group and it's just all low-level players, or also sometimes high-level players without builds, then what I will do is actually swap to real build and just, or leave, either or, and just, yeah, not put extra burden on a random matchmaking group. As basically me joining a team with this build is a dick move. At its core, it is a dick move. I'm taking in a build that is exceptionally weak, just to give myself a challenge, and especially in random matchmate group where they're not obviously consenting to it, then yeah, it is basically a dick move. But here we have a foam eclipse with us. We have something reddish, although both have some armor cores. Their output was good enough to kill in that last room, and I will actually then stick around with this. I will check for the key here, as I do want that extra weapon chest that is that key provides, and I will push up to here and check there as well for the key and inspect my allies real quick. So we have Heartbreaker, but a weird setup, a Striker, but with Picaros, and a foam eclipse. And especially a foam eclipse here will actually be a little bit annoying. I do not enjoy playing with foam eclipses on, well, myself as well, but also together with them on heroic, as especially on missions like here, they will actually put enemies in positions where they're actually impossible to just get to. And that's actually more annoying and actually costs time more so than a fire eclipse would. In Legendary, that's a lot more fine, as they don't basically camp them inside of doorways, which is the big issue, is that they will grab a bunch of them inside of a doorway and make it impossible to basically deal with that doorway, as the elites will still fire back while they're foamed, so you can't really easily pie that door, and that actually makes stuff sometimes slower in comparison to a flame eclipse or a fire eclipse. If a fire eclipse did not exist, then yes, it is a fine choice. But fire eclipses do exist, and on heroic they just do it better. Now we are moving up. We're going decently quick. My allies are doing effective damage, and I will try to as well. Although my level of effective damage isn't the same as theirs, as I am basically very weakened. One tip for places like here is just blind fire. There's no reason to stand here and fire. I just want one dog gone. That will also stagger the heavies for a second, and I will actually go for a second dog. One thing that I do have as well is I have decent enough crit damage still, so I can actually go for the legs on dogs. My weapon choices as well, actually, I wanted to talk about real quickly, is that you see me use an LMG and an AR, and specifically the AR is an AK. And that is because more than most of the other stats, so when selecting a weapon, you basically have a choice between three things. One is burst, one is sustain, one is mag damage, and that also is burst length as the options. And especially for a build like this, I need damage per mag to be quite high, as I'm just dealing less damage. I would run out of ammo with a FAMAS. Even with gunner, I would actually still run out. I'm going to actually grab the ammo. I guess they grabbed the key there. I'm guessing that's why they went around. Here we of course have that ambush moment. One thing that you can do with LMGs that is actually very effective is to, so I'm waiting for this door actually, is to unload them once per room, which is what usually I use secondary, on quite a lot of builds you will see, especially on my red builds, that I'm using a secondary LMG, which is set up with, without fast hands, so without a sustained talent, and
Serious trauma.
so in this case trained actually, and is my secondary. And that's basically like that. I unload it once per room. I basically just use the burst of it. I only use it in burst mode. I don't reload it ever. And I basically reload it in between rooms. As also, every time that you actually grab ammo from one of those, one of the ammo chests, that reloads all your weapons. So actually quite often as well, I don't actually reload it in between rooms. I just grab ammo in between rooms, and that is actually faster than my reload on my LMGs. That is actually, yeah, just a general red build tactic. Like, that is something that you can actually use LMGs quite effectively for. I'm going to try and get this fire to spread a little bit out, as that will help us a little bit, even though it doesn't have enough duration left really. I'm going to try and, yeah, basically get some CC going, or together with, of course, the Eclipse has put it on them, and I'm just going to try to help him to spread it. As, yeah, for instance, there was an elite with foam on him that makes him actually a better target than the red that was right next to him. As once I kill that elite, it will actually spread out to the others. And as you can see, I need a full mag of this AK to kill an elite, even a rusher there almost. And yeah, that's how weak this build is. Even with me trying to squeeze the most out of it, it is quite weak. And yeah, that is the intention here. So yeah, here I'm reloading the LMG in between, even though there is actually a weapon crate in a second. I'll also put some flame rounds in here, and I'll start moving towards the next room. I will actually go grab a chest in this side room here. I'm going to assume that they actually did grab the key as well. That was that short excursion that they did. This chest is here. This one, unlike with the normal variant where it's over there and you can actually grab it when you're running to the boss room, that one in the invaded version you can't. And here, yeah, as that ally there showed as well, if you run in between the two ropes and hold the parkour button, then you do just jump down. Yeah, we're moving pretty slowly, and I'm just trying to compete with the two other reds and see if I can outdo them. As especially on Black Tusk missions, basically on non-outcast, non-True Sons missions, you can somewhat trust the damage numbers at the end of a mission. There are ways to break it intentionally, so you can't just trust someone posting those numbers. As yeah, there are many ways to. There's a chest over here, a key chest that I will grab along the way, as I will not be going back up there otherwise. Yeah, I'm going to set up here, wait for this group, and actually fall back a little bit. And here again, I'm going to use the LMG until it runs out of ammo, and I'm basically not going to take the time to reload it inside of combat. Here we're actually already, so yeah, that for instance is one of the ways to stat pad, which is to shoot. So that mini tank was going to deconstruct on its own, and you can still shoot it while it still has health to do some damage to it. So yeah, we're Going here, I'm going to try to get that foam to spread. They might... they do not have the chest, likely. Which is something that I actually will inspect for in a second. Because the spread range there should have covered it, but it did not. The pulse here. See where everything else. One last wave. And we have two shielders just blocking us quite well. The Eclipse is... I don't know, they do have the chest. It was just likely just outside of the range. Here again as well, I will open up with the LMG, which is, yeah, a tactic that also works on reds, on red builds. As that is actually what is quite a strong thing to do with LMGs, as you basically use the burst of the LMG, the burst DPS of it, so it's operating at its burst DPS for until you reload basically. And because you're not reloading it, you're swapping to an AR. You then do basically a burst of the a burst DPS of the duration of its mag of the AR, and then you go into sustain mode for the AR. And yeah, that's also why I'm basically using an AK as well. Is also, yeah, it is damage per mag. It is more sustain, and I kind of need that, especially for solo play or something. And I have actually ran this specific build, so the build as it is here, or basically the variations of it that existed before that were even weaker than it, through almost all missions. I think I've done all missions with them at this point, because yeah, even like something like Tidal and stuff, I've done it solo heroic, without directives or anything, as yeah, I don't really enjoy directives anyway to begin with. But yeah, this build can go through them, and that might be surprising to some people, as there is actually no real DPS checks on missions. You can basically slow boat through them. There is no place where if you take too long that it would fail. I'll actually go for the chest here. I was going for the head, but my allies are going through the chest faster than me. And here I'm curious if I actually did compete with my allies. I joined one room in. They done one room before me. So let us see. This is always the fun part, where I get to see if I actually, with a purple build, did okay. And yeah, especially against, I think that was the striker. I'm going to just have a check. Yeah, the strikers are quite unbeatable. Heartbreakers as well are actually also pretty still high up in damage and making them quite hard to beat. But especially in the olden days, red builds, I could quite often join a mission and beat a red build, and yeah, I would just use my knowledge of the game and such to compete with them. As yeah, I can actually output decently well with the AK, which helps, as an AK, even though they're surpassed by the TKB, they're still good sustainers, they're good bursters. And I would just try to beat them at points. And yeah, that we did decently okay here, and this was mostly just to show like how weak it kind of is. As yeah, it is quite weak, but it is still, as I said in the other video as well, viable, where I ran it through Lincoln. And in a second, actually, we'll continue with the turretdrone build, as I'll take that likely to do some control points. And here I've gone and grabbed that purple turretdrone build, and it is still mostly as actually on that build picture. The only weapon that's changed is this one from a FAMAS to a SOCOM, as yeah, an in-sync FAMAS would run out of ammo way too much, especially on a turretdrone build, and I would rather not have that happen, so I've swapped to a SOCOM. And as you can see here, it still has kinetic momentum, it still has tech supports, even though I would prefer combined arms, but it mostly still has all the brand bonuses and skill damages that normal turretdrone build would have. It just doesn't have the capacitor to bump it up a little bit more. So it is actually still a quite effective build. One thing also I kind of want to make a note of is actually, yeah, if you want to be a card-carrying member of a purple gang, then yeah, you also have to have your everything colored purple. And as you saw with my other build as well, and this one as well, yeah, the weapons are solid purple, and the gear is full purple. And while you can go a little bit, towards some other colors that still are mostly purple, as for instance on this weapon, I've chosen to do that. On most weapons, I have it mostly purple. This is actually with the manhunt. This character has not done the manhunt yet, so this zone is True Sons, where it is normally, of course, Outcast. I got jumped by a patrol here, so I'm going to deal with them real quick before I actually start on the CP, as turret-drone builds are on themselves not very strong builds to begin with, so I'd rather not deal with the back spawn. I'm going to push in here. I'm going to put my turret over there, just to have it a little bit closer than me. I'm going to attempt to shoot off that turret, just so he doesn't place it, but actually my turret, everything killed it. I'm going to pop my flare and see. Also, as you saw, I used that flare to see when those red pop-ups popped up on, as I knew there were some enemies over there, but I didn't know where they were. We don't have any directives active, fog of war such isn't active, so that lets me do stuff like that, so I can kind of guess where they were coming from. And yeah, a medic was there, and he became top priority as soon as I saw him. As yeah, especially medics, if you just let them linger for too long, they can be very annoying. Especially what you see here is that my personal damage is quite a lot lower than most turret drone builds, but actually my turret and my drone are still killing fast enough. This is a CP4, even without directives. We're going through a decent-ish speed, even though, of course, as I recently showed with, for instance, the turret drone negotiator, turret drone hybrid, I much prefer hybrids, where I also have personal damage and can actually kill a lot more. As here, yeah, I am basically a pea shooter on my end. One thing you have to always do with turret drones as well is kind of keep an eye out on what they're firing at, as yeah, that one is firing on that turret, and that is the least consequential enemy there. Another medic, another wild medic has appeared, and he has made himself the prime target by trying to res. It is also the named. Both my turret and my drone are about to go on cooldown, which they do there. I'm actually flanked, and I'm flanked on above. So I'm actually going to push up here. This elite, if the second they choose to shoot me, actually they will kill me. They luckily aren't choosing to do so. I am actually going to run away and heal up here. As I've hit my health gate, I got lucky by them not. And my turret and my drone have come off of cooldown, and my turret actually will kill her a lot faster than I will. I'm going to clean up upstairs here a little bit, as I just don't want to have that happen again. And the medic, in the meanwhile, has taken that time to actually res a few of his allies, but once this drone is on him, he will likely not survive. And then we have to clean up the mess that he made by resing a bunch of stuff. One thing as well, as recently I was looking at, especially old builds, old screenshots of mine. I'm going to push up, by the way, to this roof here. They do not spawn on this roof, so I know it's safe up here. My turret goes down, and we'll just start killing. And I'm set up here as well for the return wave. But I was looking at some very old builds that, post Warlords. So I was around level 600-ish, 700-ish. And we didn't have some of the brands that we have now. Empress did not exist, for instance, so we were three-piecing Hardwired together with the brands that were in the game at that point. And Wyvern and Honeydew actually, and yeah, stuff like that. Where once Empress came in, of course, skill efficiency is the best stat, and made increased not so much at our output. The skill damage output stayed the same, but skill efficiency. Well, actually, no, we gained 5, but skill efficiency as well just added into skill haste, added into a lot of the other stats, of course, that matter. Skill health as well. I'm going to pick up my turret and I'm going to actually put it on top of that heavy machinery down there. Mostly because I want to have it ready for this next wave. And without my skills out, as my drone as well timed out there as it ran through its full duration, I'm very weak. But yeah, so going back to nostalgia of those old builds, we also didn't have optimization back then, and we also didn't have full-on stats back then as heroics. We hadn't farmed everything as much as we have now. I remember when Warlords came in, heroic wasn't the standard difficulty we went for. It was mostly challenging, and you basically needed to actually play well to do well in heroics. Yeah, all of that together actually back then meant that things were a lot more challenging than they are now. And heroic was, of course, a lot more difficult, as also expertise as well added on top of that. Optimization, of course. As players, more long-time players are over 1k, so they have other watch stats. So even back then, like for instance, as I said, I was around level 600 on those screenshots, and yeah, I did not have all my watch points yet. And all of that stuff together made us a lot weaker, and it is actually fun to once in a while go back. Oh, we have rogues as well. That's nice, actually. The drone builds deal decently well with rogues. I would much rather prefer to be on a PFE build to just trounce them quite easily. So one thing that they have is a restorer hive. It is around there, I think. I'm just going to basically recon by fire by using that. I'm actually going to reconstruct my drone. I'm trying to call it back, but it didn't want to listen, so it just bad boy gets put down. I'm going to deconstruct both actually, as I just need it's going to take a little bit before these two push into my allies and push into me, as they will. The one thing that is annoying, of course, is, well, sniper turrets are dangerous, and they have a healing hive there. That healing hive is almost dead. I'm going to toss one more grenade and actually make it dead. I am actually going to put my turret back there again. And one thing I want to do here is have both my turret and my drone go after one target, not spread my damage out as much as I was doing there. As I want to burn one down, and then I want to burn down the other. If my drone actually joins as well on that one, she is a much better target. And, well, of course, we are on solo scaling on heroic, so they're not... 4-man scaling bumps up the health of rogues and hunters and such by quite a lot. So here I'm just putting my skills behind them and just dealing a little bit damage to them. And even as weak as this build is, it can still deal well enough with some rogues, even though I got myself surrounded. So before I die, actually, let me jump away. I'm going to deconstruct my turret just to get it closer to me, as my drone will likely finish off that rogue. But this patrol that moved in, even though it seems to be just a red, oh, okay, then I actually didn't need to be as concerned as I was. But yeah, there we took down some rogues, and, well, of course, it's solo scaling without any directives and such. We still did it decently okay. And again, this build, of course, as well, is a challenge build. It's not there to do top damage. It's not intended to. It couldn't if it wanted to. I am actually just going to grab the name over there, or at least have a look at it. And what I'm going to do is actually jump to the summit real quick, and we're not going to do any summit, but I just quickly want to show you where I mostly farm it, and just explain one other thing as well, and then we will head into the conclusion of this video. So the best place for me to farm, I feel, is the summit, as of course we have settable targeted loot. And that together with Summit having the ability to have as many directives as we want to have. As you can see there, I have it set at 6 directives, and that is usually what I can run quite easily with tech tanks. Tech tanks mostly don't care about all 6 of those directives, and even scavenge skills they can deal quite well with. But normally this would be set on hard, and so these would be basically the settings I would go farm with. And that's mostly down to, hard, of course, is the requirement for purple gear to drop from enemies. And the reason, chests and such, for instance, in the world, of course, also drop purple gear. But the scaling of hard versus the scaling of normal for the loot drops is actually, that allows us to have some drops that are maxed out, as they are exceptionally rare to just get from a chest that is just scaled to normal. So the open world chest, for instance, or if you play it on normal, trying to get good pieces is actually very hard there. And the other thing that helps is having a ton of directives, as the directives help targeted loot to drop, as that chance is also decreasing because we're going on a lower difficulty. So difficulty also matters for the amount of targeted loot that drops. Alongside the normal loot, so the chance of target loot dropping alongside normal loot is also decreased when you go to hard. So by bumping it up a little bit with some directives, as we have here, so 6 directives is actually quite easy for me to deal with, especially with tech tanks, and basically as many directives as you can handle. And also it is hard, so it is a lower difficulty, so you don't need to think of it as like you need to be super effective. Even doing a little bit of damage, even, for instance, a purple field could go through it. Although, so if you're running 10 directives already, doing it on hard is even easier. And yeah, that lets you have drops that can be quite good, and will let you compete decently well with normal high-end builds. And if you want to be superior, you have to put some time in, of course. And that actually leads us into the conclusion of this video, as I feel that I've given you some stories, I've given you some insights as to how to have and make and run purple builds. As running them is the same as the normal builds, but mostly getting them is where the challenge is, and where the fun is for me, as it completely changes my look towards loot. As for me, loot, of course, I'm a very long time player of this game, but loot has diminished in the dopamine hits that it gives me. But when I get a good purple piece, those hit better than most even unicorn style drops. And I would highly recommend going out and farming some of these and running them, and finding like-minded people to run them together. As I would love for someday, as a lot of the players that had purple builds that I grew up with and played purple builds with, they have moved on from the game, so I don't have currently I only have one player on my that actively plays that still has a purple build, and from time to time we still grab them and run together. But I'm hoping to reinvigorate interest in these builds, as I have always been a great proponent for them, especially on the farming, and it can be quite fun. And it's also quite fun to just run instead of running heroics, running hard summits once in a while, as you will feel quite powerful, and that can be fun as well. So I hope you enjoyed this video. For my next video, I will actually attempt to finish up the build masterclass for tech tanks, as since they have warned the people to not use the failao exploit anymore. Summit has become somewhat more playable, and that is basically the last content that I need really for it. So likely that will follow up this video in a few days. And I hope you join me for that one. Have a good night.